Pay close attention, because what I'm about to reveal will expose a truth most men over 50 never notice. She smiles, calls you babe, and laughs at your jokes, but quietly, she's testing how far you'll tolerate disrespect. Tonight, I'll reveal 6 subtle tests women use to see if you'll let boundaries slide, and why ignoring them can cost your dignity. These tests hide in casual comments, late-night messages, and everyday interactions. Before we dive in, hit subscribe and like this video, because the truth isn't for everyone. And tell me, what city are you watching from? Let's see who's paying attention tonight. 1. The dismissive comment test. She smiles, laughs, or makes a casual remark, but hidden in her tone is a subtle test. The dismissive comment is designed to see if you'll let her undermine you without consequence. It can appear as sarcasm about your habits, a playful jab at your choices, or a joke that belittles something important to you. Notice the subtleties, the way her voice drops slightly when she says it, the fleeting smirk, the way she watches your reaction like a scientist. She wants to see if you'll brush it off, laugh along, or accept the slight as harmless. Men over 50 often fall into the trap, mistaking it for teasing or harmless banter. Gossip-style truth. One woman confided to her friend, "I had to see if he'd let it slide, and he did, just like I thought." Another laughed, saying how she could casually undermine a partner's opinion in front of friends and gauge if he reacted. Teaching point. This is the first measure of respect. A man who ignores the slight signals that boundaries are negotiable. One dismissed jab today can become repeated disrespect tomorrow. But dismissive comments are only the opening act. The next test doesn't come with words. It comes with action, timing, and subtle manipulation. 2. The last-minute change. Test. She cancels plans, shifts schedules, or changes commitments at the last second. And she's watching closely to see how you respond. A work ran late excuse, a sudden gym session, or a spontaneous girls' night may seem harmless, but this is a subtle boundary test. She wants to know if you'll adapt without objection, silently accepting her choices, or if you'll enforce standards and express your expectations. Notice the pattern. The changes are often small but consistent. Maybe she rearranges dinner plans, delays errands you both planned, or forgets agreements she previously confirmed. Men over 50 often accommodate without hesitation. Valuing harmony or assuming flexibility is harmless. Gossip-style truth. One woman whispered to a friend, "He never complained when I cancelled last minute. I knew he'd roll over every time." Another laughed about testing her partner's patience with repeated schedule shifts, watching if he'd assert himself or silently comply. Teaching point. Last-minute changes are more than inconvenience. They're a test of your boundaries. If you allow them repeatedly, she learns that your time and standards can be disregarded. But this test is just the start. The next one doesn't rely on words or actions, it's silence. And silence can be more revealing than any excuse. 3. The silent treatment test. She suddenly goes quiet. Messages are ignored, eye contact is minimal, and her tone is clipped when she speaks. This isn't about a simple bad mood. It's a calculated test to see how you handle emotional withdrawal. Will you chase, apologize unnecessarily, or stay composed? Her reaction tells her exactly how much control she has over your patience and loyalty. Notice the subtleties. She might respond after hours or days, but only superficially. She may scroll her phone while you talk, answer your questions in monosyllables, or let uncomfortable silences stretch deliberately. Men over 50 often interpret this as stress or distraction, not realizing it's a deliberate gauge of reaction. Gossip-style truth. One friend admitted, "I went silent just to see if he'd chase me, and he did, exactly like I expected." Another laughed, recalling how a partner's overreaction revealed his tolerance for manipulation. Teaching point. the silent treatment is not about communication, it's about power. If you react with guilt, panic, or overcompensation, she sees it as a green light to push boundaries further. And here's the cliffhanger. When silence fails to elicit a reaction, she escalates, testing your emotional response through subtle comparisons, bringing the next level of challenge to your boundaries. 4. The comparisons to others. Test. She casually mentions other men, friends, co-workers, or even acquaintances, and watches closely for your reaction. These aren't blatant insults or threats. They're subtle, almost conversational, designed to see if you'll tolerate emotional undermining. She gauges whether you'll feel jealousy, insecurity, or challenge her, or if you'll shrug it off. Notice the realism. She might laugh about a male coworker's success, casually reference someone's helpful advice, or mention another man in passing during a story. Men over 50 often dismiss this as harmless storytelling or playful teasing, but in reality, it's a test of your confidence and boundaries. Gossip-style truth. One woman confided to a friend, "He didn't flinch when I mentioned him. That told me exactly how far I could push." Another admitted using minor comparisons to measure whether her partner would assert himself or remain passive. Teaching point. Comparisons probe your emotional stability. If you tolerate repeated references without asserting boundaries, she learns that diminishing your position is safe and effective. But the comparison test is not the last step. The next challenge is quieter, subtler, and tests whether you will continue to comply with requests that chip away at your respect over time. 5. The neglected requests. Test. She asks favors, small or significant, and watches whether you comply automatically. It could be running an errand at the last minute, covering a social obligation, or taking on emotional labor she could manage herself. The key is subtlety. She wants to see if you'll meet her needs without question or stand firm and enforce your boundaries. Notice the details. She phrases requests casually, sometimes disguised as a question, sometimes as a reminder. Men over 50 often respond out of habit, loyalty, or a desire to avoid conflict, not realizing that each concession reinforces her belief that your respect is negotiable. Gossip-style truth. A friend once said, "He did everything I asked without complaint, too compliant. I knew I could keep asking." Another laughed, recalling how small, repeated requests tested her partner's patience, showing her who would bend and who would resist. Teaching point. Neglected requests are not about the favor itself. They're a subtle test of your limits. Every time you comply without asserting your standards, she learns she can push further. And here's the cliffhanger. Once she understands your pattern of compliance, she escalates to her ultimate test, where every previous trial converges to see just how much you'll tolerate. 6. The boundary breach. Test. This is the ultimate test. She crosses a line, big or small, to see whether you'll respond, challenge it, or silently accept it. It could be intruding on your personal space, speaking over you publicly, or pushing emotional or social limits you once set. She's watching closely to see if your boundaries are firm or negotiable. Notice the details. She might linger in private areas uninvited, comment sarcastically about decisions you made, or subtly disrespect your preferences in front of friends. Men over 50 often hesitate to react, thinking it's a one-off or wanting to avoid confrontation. But each tolerated breach strengthens her perception that your limits can be tested repeatedly. Gossip-style truth. One friend admitted, "I wanted to see if he'd let me walk over him, and he did, exactly like I expected." Another laughed about how crossing small boundaries revealed a partner's willingness to comply, opening the door for repeated disrespect. Teaching point. Boundary breaches reveal your true capacity to enforce respect. If ignored, they signal that limits are flexible, encouraging further testing. This is where all previous tests, dismissive comments, last-minute changes, silence comparisons, and neglected requests culminate. And here's the insight. Recognizing this test is crucial. It shows you exactly how far she'll push and whether she believes your respect is negotiable. See you in the next video.